The western marches lay shrouded in an eerie silence, the full moon casting its pale light over the desolate landscape. In a field of withered grass and twisted trees, a lone figure hunched over, his form a grotesque amalgamation of man and beast. Roderic, once a proud warrior of the marches, now found himself trapped in the throes of a horrific transformation.
What have I become? Is this my fate?
The words escaped his muzzle in a guttural growl barely recognizable as human speech. His massive claws, stained with fresh blood, dug into the earth as he struggled against the primal urge that consumed him. The scent of death hung heavy in the air, a grim testament to the savage feast that had just transpired. Roderic's werewolf form is a mass of corded muscle, and matted fur trembled with the effort of maintaining some semblance of control. His eyes, now burning with a feral intensity, darted frantically around the moonlit clearing, searching for any sign of his lost humanity.
I can't control it. Must stop.
His words were a desperate plea, a mixture of anguish and bestial rage. Lifting his blood-soaked snout to the sky, Roderic let out a haunting howl that echoed through the night, a sound filled with pain, regret, and the terrifying realization of what he had become.
Father, you warned me. I failed you.
The memory of his father's teachings flickered briefly in his mind, a beacon of light quickly swallowed by the darkness of his current state. Roderic's massive form shuddered, caught between the man he once was and the monster he had become. The brutality of his actions stood in stark contrast to the serene beauty of the moonlit field. In the distance, the faint outline of his village could be seen, unaware of the danger that lurked so close to their homes. Roderic's inner turmoil raged on, his human consciousness battling against the overwhelming bloodlust that threatened to consume him entirely. As the night wore on, Roderic's transformations continued, each shift between his human and werewolf form, more agonizing than the last. The beast within him howled for release, while the man fought desperately to regain control. It was a battle that would shape not only his own destiny, but the fate of all those he held dear in the western marches. The dense forests of the western marches stood silent, save for the rhythmic clashing of wood against wood. In a small clearing, dappled with afternoon sunlight, a young Roderic faced his father, Thorgrim the Unyielding. Both held wooden training swords, their breaths coming in short gasps as they circled each other. Thorgrim, a bear of a man with a thick beard streaked with grey, looked at his son with a mixture of pride and concern. His weathered face bore the scars of countless battles, each a testament to the life of a berserker.
Listen to me, Roderic,
Thorgrim said, his voice deep and resonant. He lowered his practice sword and placed a calloused hand on his son's shoulder.
Our blood carries both a curse and a gift. We are berserkers, descendants of the great warrior Fenrir, but with that power comes great danger.
Young Roderic, his eyes wide with a mix of awe and trepidation, looked up at his father.
What kind of danger, father?
Thorgrim's expression darkened, his grip on Roderic's shoulder tightening slightly.
If you let your rage consume you, you will transform into a bloodlusting werewolf without any control. You've seen the scars on my back, the ones that look like claw marks. Those aren't from any beast I've fought, son. They're from the times I lost control.
Roderic's eyes widened in shock. He had always wondered about those scars, but had never dared to ask.
But father, how do I control it? How do I stop from becoming that?
Thorgrim knelt down, looking directly into his son's eyes. The wrinkles around his eyes deepened as he spoke, his voice laden with the weight of experience.
It takes discipline and strength, my boy. You must learn to harness your rage and not let it control you. When you feel the anger rising, when you hear the beast howling in your mind, you must focus. Remember who you are and why you fight. You must be stronger than the beast within.
The training that followed was rigorous and unforgiving. Day after day, father and son would venture into the woods, honing Roderic's skills in combat and control. They would spar with wooden swords, Thorgrim pushing his son to his limits, teaching him to channel his rage into strength without losing himself to it.
Again, Roderick.
Thorgrim would bark as they clashed in fierce duels.
Use your mind as well as your body. Control your fury.
Roderic, sweat pouring down his face, would push through the exhaustion, determined to make his father proud. The lessons were hard, but he understood their importance. His father's words echoed in his mind like a mantra.
If you let your anger take over, you will lose yourself.
As the years passed, Roderic grew stronger, both in body and in will. Yet, the fear of losing himself to the beast within never truly left him. His father's teachings became his anchor, a lifeline to his humanity amidst the storm of his berserker nature. One evening, as they sat by the campfire after a particularly grueling training session, Thorgrim shared stories of their ancestors. His voice took on a somber tone as he spoke of great warriors who had struggled with the same curse.
They found ways to control it, and so can you,
he said softly, the firelight dancing in his eyes.
Never forget, Roderic, you are not alone in this. Our family has borne this burden for generations, and we have endured.
Roderic listened intently, drawing strength from his father's words and the legacy of those who came before him. As the flames flickered and the night deepened, he made a silent vow to master his inner beast, to honor his family's legacy, and to use his power to protect rather than destroy. Little did young Roderic know that this vow would be tested in ways he could never have imagined, as the darkness that threatened Elysian grew ever stronger, waiting to challenge the very foundations of his being. The harsh light of dawn pierced through Roderic's closed eyelids, dragging him from the depths of a fitful slumber. As consciousness returned, so did the crushing weight of reality. His eyes fluttered open, squinting against the morning sun that seemed to mock the darkness of the night before. Roderic found himself lying in the same field where his transformation had taken place, but the serene beauty of the morning belied the horrors of the previous night. His body ached, every muscle screaming in protest as he pushed himself up to a sitting position. It was then that he noticed the blood. His clothes were caked with it. His hands stained a deep crimson. Panic surged through him like a tidal wave. His eyes darted frantically around the field, searching for any sign of his victims. But there were no bodies, no remains, only the remnants of his violent transformation. The grass was flattened in places, deep furrows carved into the earth by claws that were now just calloused human hands.
What happened?
Roderic muttered, his voice hoarse and barely above a whisper. He struggled to his feet, his mind a whirlwind of confusion and horror. The memories of the previous night were like shards of a broken mirror, fragmented, sharp, and painful to touch. He remembered the rage, the hunger, the feeling of losing control, but the specifics were mercifully blurred. As he stood there, swaying slightly and trying to piece together the events of the night, a familiar voice cut through his turbulent thoughts.
Roderic!
He turned to see Zephyr Arcanum approaching, her silver hair catching the morning light, her expression a complex mixture of concern and determination. Zephyr, a master of evocation and elemental storm magic, had been one of Roderic's closest friends since their days training together in Valorian.
Zephyr, what are you doing here?
Roderic asked, his voice trembling with a mixture of relief and shame. Zephyr's piercing blue eyes scanned his blood-soaked form, taking in every detail of his disheveled state.
I followed you.
She replied, her voice soft but firm.
I knew something was wrong. I've been watching, Roderic. This cannot continue. You need to get this under control, or it will be the death of you. and perhaps others as well.
Her words struck Roderic like a physical blow. He had always feared this moment, when someone he cared about would witness the aftermath of his transformation. The shame threatened to overwhelm him, but Zephyr's next action caught him by surprise. She reached into her satchel and pulled out a small, glowing amulet. Its soft, pulsing light seemed to push back the shadows that clung to Roderic's soul.
Here, take this.
Zephyr said, holding out the amulet.
It's enchanted to help you control your powers while in werewolf form. It's not a permanent solution, but it should help you maintain your humanity during the change.
Roderic took the amulet with trembling hands, feeling its warmth spread through his body, calming the lingering rage that still simmered beneath the surface.
Thank you, Zephyr,
He said, his voice thick with emotion.
I don't know what happened last night. I woke up and...
I know.
Zephyr interrupted gently, placing a comforting hand on his shoulder.
The beast within you is strong, Roderic, but you are stronger. This amulet will help, but you need to remain vigilant. Your will is your greatest weapon against the darkness.
Roderic nodded, slipping the amulet around his neck. As its warmth spread through his body, he felt a sense of clarity return, the fog of bestial instincts receding. But Zephyr's expression remained grave.
But there's more, Roderic.
She said, her voice taking on an urgent tone.
The blight is spreading through the western marches and the outer tribes. I've seen it with my own eyes. Crops withering in the fields, water turning foul, and dark creatures stalking the shadows. Something evil is at work, and we need to act quickly.
Roderic's heart sank at the news. He had heard whispers of the blight, but to hear it confirmed by Zephyr made it all too real.
What can I do?
He asked, feeling a renewed sense of purpose despite his exhaustion.
High Marshal Anya Volkov sent me.
Zephyr explained, her eyes flashing with determination.
She needs you to represent the Western Marches at a council meeting in Valorian, the city of Whispering Arcana. You must be her eyes and ears, Roderic. This is crucial. The fate of our lands may depend on what we learn and decide at this council.
Roderic straightened, pushing aside his personal turmoil. The people of the Western Marches needed him, and he would not let them down.
I understand,
He said, his voice gaining strength.
I won't fail High Marshal Anya or our people.
Zephyr squeezed his shoulder, a small smile breaking through her serious demeanor.
I know you won't. You're stronger than you know, Roderic. Now I must go. I'll take a portal to Valorian and prepare for the meeting. You need to return to the village and speak with High Marshal Anya. She'll give you further instructions.
With a wave of her hand, Zephyr conjured a swirling portal of arcane energy. The air shimmered and crackled with magic, a testament to her power as a member of the Council of Seven.
Stay safe, Zephyr.
Roderic called as she prepared to step through. She paused at the edge of the portal, looking back at him with a mixture of affection and concern.
You too, Roderic. Remember, control your rage. The amulet will help, but the true strength comes from within you.
As the portal closed behind Zephyr, leaving Roderic alone in the field, he felt the weight of responsibility settle heavily on his shoulders. He turned towards his village, his mind racing with thoughts of the challenges ahead. The blight, the council meeting, his own inner demons, all of it seemed overwhelming. But as he began his journey home, Roderic clung to the warmth of the amulet and the memory of his father's teachings. Whatever darkness threatened Elysian, he would face it, not just as a berserker, but as a protector of his people. The familiar path back to Roderic's village seemed changed, tainted by an unseen malevolence. The amulet Zephyr had given him pulsed with a comforting warmth against his chest, but it did little to ease the growing sense of dread that gnawed at his insides. As he approached the outskirts of the village, the usual bustle was muted, replaced by a palpable tension that hung in the air like a shroud. Thorn, a grizzled farmer who had tilled these lands for decades, was the first to spot Roderic. His weathered face, usually creased with laughter lines, was now etched with worry.
Roderic!
He called out, his voice tinged with desperation.
Thank the gods you're here.
Roderic quickened his pace, his keen eyes scanning the worried faces of the villagers who had begun to gather.
Thorn, what's happened?
He asked, his hand instinctively tightening on the haft of his axe. Thorn's eyes darted nervously to the shadows between the buildings before he spoke.
It's the blight, Roderic.
He replied, his voice trembling.
It's spreading faster than we can handle. The crops are withering in the fields, and the water in the well has turned foul.
He leaned in closer, lowering his voice to a whisper.
And there are things in the night, demons and shadows moving where they shouldn't. Folk are scared to leave their homes after dark.
A chill ran down Roderic's spine at Thorn's words. He had seen the effects of the blight on his journey, but to hear of it reaching his home stirred a deep anger within him.
Tell me everything,
He said, struggling to keep his voice steady. Thorn took a deep breath, his gnarled hands twisting the hem of his tunic.
I saw it with my own eyes. The blight is like a creeping darkness, killing everything it touches. It started in the far fields, but now it's at our very doorstep. And last night...
He paused, swallowing hard.
Last night I saw shadows moving by the old mill. They weren't natural, Roderic. They moved like smoke, but their eyes burned like embers. It's like the night itself has come alive.
As Thorn spoke, other villagers added their own accounts, each tale more chilling than the last. Stories of crops turned to ash overnight, of livestock found drained of blood, of children waking screaming from nightmares of creeping shadows. Roderic's mind raced, trying to process the flood of information. The beast within him stirred, sensing the threat to his home and people. He gripped the amulet, using its calming energy to center himself.
We will deal with this,
He declared, his voice ringing with determination.
I promise you all we will find a way to stop this blight.
As he turned to make his way to the village center, a small figure darted out from the crowd. It was Lila, barely 10 summers old, her face streaked with tears.
Roderic,
She was crying, clutching a worn doll to her chest.
have you seen my father? He went out to gather herbs 3 days ago and hasn't returned. I'm scared, Roderic. What if the shadows got him?
Roderick's heart clenched at the sight of Lila's fear. He knelt down to her level, his voice softening.
What's your father's name, Lila?
Alrin,
She whispered, her small hand reaching out to grasp Roderic's much larger one.
he's the village healer.
Roderic nodded, remembering the kind-faced man who had tended to his wounds more than once.
I haven't seen him, Lila,
He said gently.
but I promise you I will find him. Do you remember where he usually goes to gather his herbs?
Lila nodded, pointing towards the edge of the forest.
He always goes to the clearing by the old oak tree. He says the best herbs grow there.
Thank you, Lila, you're very brave.
Roderic said, rising to his feet.
Stay with the other villagers, I'll bring your father back.
With a heavy heart and a mind full of dark possibilities, Roderic made his way to Volkov Keep. The imposing fortress loomed ahead, and its stone walls a comforting sight amidst the growing chaos. As he approached, a raven swooped down, landing gracefully on his shoulder. Tied to its leg was a note sealed with the crest of High Marshal Anya Volkov. Roderic quickly untied the note, and his fingers trembling slightly as he broke the seal.
Roderic, come to Volkov Keep immediately. Urgent matters to discuss. The shadows grow long, and time grows short. Anya.
The urgency in the message spurred Roderic on. He entered the keep, the guards nodding respectfully as he passed. Making his way to the High Marshal's chambers, he found Anya Volkov standing by a large table, maps and reports spread out before her. Anya was a formidable woman, her steel-gray hair pulled back in a tight braid, her piercing eyes reflecting years of hard-won battles. She looked up as Roderic entered, her face a mask of grim determination.
High Marshal.
Roderic greeted and bowed his head in respect.
Roderic,
Anya replied with her voice tight with tension.
thank you for coming so quickly. We have a situation that grows more dire by the hour. The council meeting in Valorian is no longer just important. It's crucial to our very survival. The blight spreads faster than we can combat it, and dark forces gather at our borders. We need to know what we're dealing with, and we need allies.
Roderic straightened, feeling the weight of responsibility settle on his shoulders.
I understand, High Marshal.
I will represent the Western Marches to the best of my ability. I swear it on my life and honor. Anya's expression softened slightly, a glimmer of pride shining through her stern demeanor.
I know you will, Roderic. You've always been one of our finest. But be warned, this journey will test you in ways you cannot imagine. The blight. It doesn't just corrupt the land. It seeps into the mind, twisting thoughts and feeding on fears. You must be vigilant not just against external threats, but against the darkness within yourself.
Her words struck a chord in Roderic, reminding him of his own inner struggle. He nodded solemnly, his hand unconsciously touching the amulet hidden beneath his tunic.
Go now.
As Anya continued, her voice gained urgency.
Prepare for your journey. And, Roderic, send a raven as soon as you have any information. The fate of the Western Marches may well depend on what you learn in Valorian.
As Roderic turned to leave, Anya called out once more.
And Roderic, be careful. We need you to return to us. The Western Marches need their protector.
With a final nod to the High Marshal, Roderic left the keep, his mind racing with all he had learned and all that lay ahead. The journey to Valorian would be perilous, but he was determined to face whatever challenges arose. As he stepped out into the fading light of day, Roderic silently vowed to protect his home and uncover the truth behind the spreading darkness, no matter the cost.